I think it's time to note that this is last week today for May 17th, 2021. All the top stories over the last week on Freedom Forum News. My name is Chuck Black. I am with Alan Calder. Alan, you look bright and shiny and fresh today.
I'm sleeping in a new packaging all night. It's something that you shouldn't talk about, but yeah, it works like a charm. What,
Having a fun day. It's gorgeous outside. I
you
went
know what?
nuts. Hmm?
I'd like to suggest that the recap may easily start off on the protest, though, as we were there, and it was a huge deal.
I think
Uh,
that's actually a good idea. We're going to share the screen.
yeah,
There is our Freedom Forum News logo. I particularly like that logo.
I love it too.
We have our Freedom Forum News ad for DVD Canada. I want everybody to go out and take a look at that. And our protest story this week, we just posted that a couple of minutes back. Is it the Ontarians no longer listening to the government or social distancing pronouncements?
Oh, those are all that's I mentioned that in terms of the protest though on Saturday.
Okay.
Actually, I specifically didn't mention that, but they all tie into the protest on Saturday though.
They
Many
do.
ways.
This is a story I posted, and the core of the story is that despite the stay-at-home lockdown orders
Yeah.
currently being enforced to a greater or a lesser extent by the various local police forces acting under orders from the Ontario provincial government, Ontarians filled the streets and parks over the weekend. Some went to the beach, some slow danced together, some had a great time and had some fun.
You know
Uh,
what? That was me there too, except the slow dancing.
there. You didn't slow dance with anyone?
I didn't. I danced, but like lightning fast. Like flying. Oh, it's ridiculous. But it was awesome. There was slow dancing, more like close dancing. How's that?
Yeah, I would say that's true. We had a number of protests on the Saturday. There was a big Palestinian protest in downtown Toronto after about 5 o'clock. There was a really big anti-lockdown protest that you and I covered and participated in. That started at noon at Queen's Park. I think it had about I don't know, 15,000, 16,000 people.
There's been quite a bit of debate about that too, though.
Yeah, there
Like I
has been.
heard,
That's why I'm tentative.
yeah, I know. I heard people say stupid like things like 40,000. Then
Yeah, I'm
that's
I sat in the stationary location at the beginning of
Mhm.
the parade, and I there's a link right here for anybody who wants to see it. But I tracked from a stationary position in the parade, and it took them about 22 minutes to cross my location.
the
That
reason why
normally
that's
means about
important.
15,000.
The reason why that's important to me, Chuck, is
Yeah,
that you do that every week,
yeah.
right? And the big protest that had 17,000 people or 21,000 people, you did the same thing. And
Hmm.
it's about timing then, right? So you can see the timing, how long it takes.
Yeah.
So to me, that seemed like a legitimate measurement of how many people might have been there.
It was
People
the
said
same amount of people.
40,000,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
I
sorry,
don't
you
know.
go.
Now, people were saying things like 40,000 people, and I totally understand why they might think that. You know what I mean? But it seems, based on my empirical evidence of Chuck, it seems like a bit much.
To be fair, there was also Nico King Nico. That's the person with the drone, the high
Yeah.
altitude drone that takes uh, crane shots of the protest every week.
I saw good
And
shots, for real. They were
they
good.
were really good
Yeah,
shots,
great.
nice crowds, but Nico said it was 15, maybe 17,000 people as well. Not an order of
Yeah, good.
magnitude different from us.
No, that's what I agree with that 100%. He's been at
Yeah.
protests before. I've been there before. We've seen lots of people. That seems about right. That's still huge. People go, that's a giant protest for real.
Yeah, it to me is like really, really impressive. And it's the
I agree.
beginning of summer. All the really good protests happen at the end of the summer. There
Hmm.
were hardly any police there. It was a nice, easygoing time. I believe one or two people got arrested through the day, sort of on the
Well,
periphery.
now my question to you is that there was not at a. Did you see that video of Ed getting arrested then?
No, I didn't see it. Did you?
I
You
couldn't.
saw?
Chuck, the reason I didn't send it to you though, it was on Telegram.
Ah,
Now he was arrested. He was like, "Oh, don't touch it, get the cuffs off," kind of thing. But
yeah,
he wasn't where we were at though, for real. Or I would have seen that. I think they were at a not Cherry Beach, but the Sugar Beach.
maybe,
That
maybe.
you know where I got the another spot I have getting coverage from. There's this guy I know. He's called Dmitry. Yes, he's Russian. and you'd probably recognize him, to be honest.
Yeah.
But he sent me some videos too, though. I'm gonna probably invite him to the next meeting. But
That's probably a good idea.
Great.
For anyone listening here who doesn't know, we have a editorial meeting every Sunday, an open meeting for anybody who wants to contribute to Freedom Forum every Sunday night at 7 p.m. EST. And we get some really good stories out of that meeting, and we have a lot of fun, and we get to reconnect with the people we work with.
I'd say just that often it's mostly people that we are familiar with because we have to invite them. Seriously. Like you have to have an invitation because you can't get a link to it without it.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I agree with that. I would also say we weren't the only ones who had a protest that day. For more on the Palestinian protests, and they were right across Canada, as were the freedom protests. I think 20 odd locations in Canada.
Worldwide, both of them.
Yeah, another 100 locations throughout the world. I would say the freedom protests might be a little bit larger in the aggregate, but the Palestinian protest, at least in Toronto, was bigger.
Yeah,
I
agree.
also note that the Montreal protest is ongoing. I just saw a Canadian press post 20 minutes before we started on this show saying that there is a third protest, and it happened last night as well, and it started on the Saturday night, but it's been going nightly since then. It might be ongoing.
My God, Mike was right. We should have gone.
Wild footage. What I noticed going around City Hall was that it wasn't just the people walking and looking about and carrying the signs. It was the people in the cars driving around City Hall up and down the streets, honking their horns like they had won a World Cup and waving their flags, and they felt very strongly about what they were doing, and I respect what they're doing.
Just so I'm clear, and so everyone else listening is clear, you're talking about the Palestinian protest, I'd imagine.
I'm talking about the Palestinian protest. They went out. More of them wore masks than the freedom protesters, but they didn't social distance.
Oh, they didn't look so different for the freedom protesters in my mind. In fact, Chuck, you know what's funny story? This is very personal, of course. To relate it to the stories that you were trying to get a hold of me. I was in someone's car trying to get to a liquor store at 8 o'clock, which I missed out on, and then to Cherry Beach.
You're right. It is a personal story.
And then Cherry Beach before you left, and which I did not. It took us around, like, honestly, about 2 hours in the car to get there. And the liquor store was closed by the time we got to it.
Yeah.
But it was just a crowd. It really was.
Traffic was completely blocked off.
Yeah, no kidding, man. And I walked home, by the way, I walked to my parking spot from Cherry Beach too, just at the end.
And then to finish off the night, there was a huge dance party on Cherry Beach and Sugar Beach and a couple of other beaches. And that was talked about in the May 17th, 2021 Blog VO post. A huge dance party took over Cherry Beach on the weekend, and it did the video.
Did you read that? Did you read that post?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. Unmasked people gathering at the beach and apparently not following their social distancing rules.
That seems so ridiculous. Like someone's tying on their classmate.
Yeah.
Like, or their younger sibling. Like,
to be fair, I have no idea if we can hear the audio for this. Can you hear the audio?
No.
Anyway, that was the party going on right there.
Yeah, don't worry. I've got that video, Chuck, as well.
Yeah, I wanted to show it up on the public, and that's just a reminder that nobody gave a damn what the government thought this weekend.
No, well, the people there didn't give a damn.
Yeah, well, there's also Anthony Fury. He put an editorial in the Toronto Sun, and he said that people are going to the beach, people are going to the park. Nobody gives a damn what the government thinks, and people are reconnecting with other people again, and I think that's a good thing.
That was a great article, Chuck. I admit you talked about that, but that was a great article.
Yeah. Anyway, what's our second story for the week?
Second, geez. How slow are we? That's the first story.
What's our number 2 story of the week? I would say it's the religious story.
Yeah, great, Chuck. That's good. You're right, Chuck. That's a big deal. Again, the religion stuff is huge.
This is ongoing attempts by governments in a variety of different provinces across the country to close churches. Churches have never been closed, not since the 4th century AD when Rome tried to do it. But this is Pastor Henry Hildebrandt. His church was closed but he doesn't need a building to hold sermons. He got up in an open field outside of his home, and he praised God, and he encouraged his parish to worship the Lord as they should.
As is required by their religion, you mean?
Absolutely,
Right?
absolutely.
Like as they should is one thing, but required by religion is constitutional.
Yep. And he said quite explicitly, I am not locked down this morning.
Yeah.
I saw his video on YouTube. He recorded his entire service, and he looked like he was having the time of his life. There is
Yeah.
nothing to remind you what's important than some bureaucrat from the government coming by to try and take it away.
Chuck, I could not agree more. I love him as well, and he loves everyone, and he is just doing his job as his flock needs him to, and he will do what he's got to do. He will pay the price he has to pay. He's one of the good ones.
Absolutely. He must have a 10-inch deep file folder of tickets at this point. He has been repeatedly charged with violations of the Reopening Ontario Act, which is, I think, a stupid name to call it, because it's obviously never going to allow Ontario to reopen.
I believe the word you're looking for is Orwellian doublespeak, Chuck.
Yes, I am. I am absolutely.
Like, what the hell's going? Like, why can't people? Did no one read that book again? Like, why aren't people seeing what's happening here? Like, it seems ridiculous that no one's following though. Like, that's not reopening; it's closing it for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I would say there's also issues in Calgary. Where the Calgary police arrested Fairview Baptist Church pastor Tim Stevens after his Sunday service concluded. And that was written about in the May 16th, 2021 Rebel News Post. Breaking: Calgary police arrest Fairview Baptist minister church pastor. And the arrest also came after months of local police and Alberta Health Services surveillance and harassment. Harassment's my word, but that's essentially what it was. They would come by every day and they'd threaten people, and they just sit there and they look mean, and they tried really hard to intimidate Pastor Stevens and his flock, simply because he refuses to limit his congregation and force them into mass. That's an exact quote from the story.
Well, that's fair enough. Bullies push around the weak always, though, Chuck. We always get used to the weak being pushed around by the strong with weapons and other bullies to push them around at. The people in charge find those who are bullies to police the weak, and that's what's happening here. And it's so sad that our country's devolved into this.
I agree. And I would say that a lot of the harassment isn't even coming from official sources. Scarcely 1 week after Pastor Arthur Pawlowski was arrested and charged after defying public health orders, he was arrested on the highway. He was dragged off to the car. He looked like a war.
Listen, me and him, you preach to the choir. Don't pun it.
But evidently, 2 days ago, somebody burned down his garage on his property.
You know what's weird too, Chuck? Remember that cop who came out at Queen's Park that time?
Yeah.
The day after his garage was burned down, his store that he had was burned down.
Oh yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I mean,
so
there's a lot of stuff going on in the background right now.
There's a lot of people who are not police related, who are involved in police activities and relating to police activities that they're not in.
Yeah,
a terrible coincidence, man.
A lot of vandalism, a lot of harassment is being targeted against these people who want nothing more than to worship their God as they see fit.
The same way, sorry to cut you off, Chuck, but the same way as back at Cherry Beach last year, when people who had been released from jail on the COVID requirements then found chainsaws and found Cherry Beach protest at 11 o'clock in the morning and chainsawed the DJ equipment then and did not get charged. But however, there's pictures of the police interviewing them. It's just weird that they're like Angela Lansbury then. They're never murdering anyone, but always there when there is a murder.
I think that is a pretty obvious subtext. There are people working in the background harassing others who have legitimate objections to the government, and the government's not addressing these objections. The government is simply arresting people.
Oh, I agree. Because they're too stupid to solve the problem, Chuck. They're bullies, and they have no options but to pick on people into quiet submission.
Yeah, I would say that that's quite possible. There's also Pastor Coates, and there's a half
Mm.
dozen other pastors. The pastors we talked about today are members of Canada's uh, Reformed churches. There's about 125 of them. The idea that these people are all independent, crazy people not acting together is just delusional. There is a
Oh,
very strong strain of fundamental religion in Canada which believes the church should open. And they have very logical, sensible reasons for this. Because if
mm,
the virus is real and is going to kill everybody,
mm.
well, at least it's their choice. But, I don't think anybody's going to die at a church service or 2 weeks
Or
afterwards.
Cherry Beach or Queens Park or anywhere, Chuck. Nowhere ever for what, 15 months so far?
Yeah, 15 months. We haven't died.
Well,
We've gone
they're
out a
they're
lot,
they're,
haven't we?
they're exhuming people and testing them to find out the deaths that they need to support this garbage lie. Seriously,
No, I
who
agree.
who was in charge of it? Who was supporting this shit? I don't. Who was okay with the lockdowns now, Chuck? I've never met a person.
The Ontario provincial government's okay with it, but
I
they
said
don't go out in
people.
public. They're locked down.
I said people.
Yeah.
They're not people. They're
uh,
robots of stupidity. Then,
I understand the anger,
oh,
and I've got a certain amount
cricket.
of it too.
Chuck, my
Uh,
bad. Oh,
Other stories this week. A
yeah.
reminder that what happens now has happened before. Canadian human rights activist Mark Emery speaks on freedom and liberty. It's a quick 12-minute interview taken by Mike Baer from Free Speech Media on Saturday, just before the anti-lockdown protests. He says some absolutely wonderful things. Emery is some guy you should know. He's been a strong advocate for marijuana legalization, strong advocate for freedom movements in general, and he's been doing this stuff for like 40
Sort of
years.
cut you off, Chuck, but the reason you know this is yesterday we were in a meeting. I said, "Isn't that the Prince of Pot?" Like, I do know him, man. Me and him are kindred spirits of sorts. When I was in law school, I wrote a paper on the history of narcotic legislation in Canada. Then, a racist to beginning. That was the title of it then. And so he was not my contemporary so much as someone to admire for what he's done. He went to jail in
Yeah,
California for this stuff.
I'm assuming he's a bit older than you. He looks about 20 years older.
Well, he is. Well, that's so do you, Chuck. Like,
Yeah.
he's still you're both good guys. But the point is that he's one of the guys who was human rights in the marijuana thing. He went to jail in California for exporting marijuana to people who ordered it for like a truly lost kind of operation for financial for him.
Yeah.
It's
An
great. He's a guy I
absolutely good
respect.
man.
Yeah,
It's good to know he's still alive and kicking and active.
exactly. 100% correct, Chuck. And Mike Baer wants me to emphasize that he's a human rights activist and not the Prince of Pot. And that's true. Not true though.
Mike's a
He's
good
both though.
man.
Mike's a good man. So is Mark Emery though. Is the point, right?
Yeah, yeah. Here is something that really shocked me. This is from James Corbett, one of the fathers of the current alternative media movement.
Grandfathers, like he's been so long and so good for so long, Chuck. He's a hero of mine a bit too.
He found a document from February 2021, an official government of Canada publication written by a former head of strategic oversight for the World Economic Forum, which openly discusses and actively supports the idea of people being rounded up into dense urban environments and placated with digital facsimiles of the natural world while being monitored by smart technology, which makes all our key decisions for us. So we sit in the chair and get fat.
Oh, that was shocking. That
Yeah.
as are most of his proclamations, though. And this is a scarier one than most, as it was from Canadian government sources, though.
This is from Canadian government sources,
No,
but here it is. Here's the document, Exploring Digital Convergence. It's
yeah.
from a Canada Council organization, Policy Horizons Canada, and it's written by a variety of people. What happens when biology and digital technology merge? If you give all the power to do that to the government controls your every word and you become cattle. I think that's the
And
point of
tying
it.
this into the 2030 agenda,
Yeah,
right?
I think they explicitly note the 2030 agenda in this
Mm.
paper.
With the steps of the Canadian government policy, then, right? And including
Yes.
it's lockstep with the World Economic Forum and the government policy of Canada and crazy conspiracy theories from 10 years ago. They're all doing the
Yeah,
same thing.
and Crystal van der Elst is a ex-member of the World Economic Council.
She's deeper than that, though. Even she is. That's a big enough problem on its own. But she's tied to everyone that's got a problem. Then, but
Well, she's got quite the
you know,
bio. I would encourage everybody to take a look at it. I would encourage everybody to also take a look at Corbett's overview of
mhm.
what's going on. He's a very good writer, very knowledgeable, very skillful, a lot of background information. It's anybody who thinks this sort of stuff is conspiracy theory, just doesn't know their ass from a hole in the ground.
Chuck, the people who wear masks can't find their own dick in the dark.
Yeah.
Now, now,
Yeah.
the next story though I like, Chuck, is the Waterloo region, Ontario, left in limbo after AstraZeneca vaccine suspended by provincial government.
Give me a
You
moment. Let
know,
me go back to it. Let me go back to it.
for those of you watching, the problem is that there's a screen and a screen I have as well as Chuck.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, AstraZeneca has been suspended by the provincial government. Evidently, there's lots of side effects that cause, I don't know, blood vessels to explode or something like that. You
Is that
notice?
dangerous?
No, evidently.
Oh, it's acceptable level of danger for something that does not exist. And it's like strafing bullets in the air. Not everyone's going to live landed on, but so it's fair enough risk for racing bullets. So
Yeah, if you go into some
yeah.
place, if you have access to journalism from Europe or access to journalism from South America, or even to a lesser extent from the United States, there are all sorts of stories about how AstraZeneca is causing unwanted side effects in a surprisingly high proportion of the population that receives their jab. And the Canadian government and the Canadian legacy media doesn't really want any information to come out, but even they have acknowledged that the jab, the AstraZeneca jab, has been suspended. They are no longer going to give it to people in Ontario.
I wonder how that will work with the Canadian government and the interplay between them. Then, depending on which company I believe that the Canadian government is in bed with Pfizer.
Yeah,
I can't remember who's getting bought out by who, but I believe that's what it is for them.
yeah.
Right, so they can badmouth this vaccine. It's easier for them as it will not affect their campaigns.
No, I agree 100%. So much of what's going on with these vaccines has to do with who's bought and paid for by who. I agree with that 100%. There are some really good stories if you have access to other news sources, particularly in India, but to a lesser extent, like I said, Europe, Asia, South South America,
When you
and
say
I
have
would.
access to,
You
right?
what?
When you say have access to the internet, or is it language issue you mean, or internet stuff?
No,
Because
to
we
me, it's
all
not a
have access
language
to it.
issue. To me,
Yeah.
it's what is it? What are those things called? It's a piece of technology that I've forgotten what it's called.
Use a
I
clue,
don't
Chuck. Use a clue.
remember.
Do you mean like
It's English language.
yeah?
Let me just go back. Right now, I'm on the wrong screen, so let me go back to the right screen. At some point, I'll check this out.
The reason
A VPN. If you got a VPN, you can
oh,
find
yeah.
the real stories.
All right, oh, fair enough. Then that makes sense, Chuck. The reason I'm asking is that I don't feel that I've been information throttled then a bit. Like I feel my access is to people who are covering the stuff that are people like us who have VPNs or whatever. But there's other ways than just watching news to find it. I feel. I think
I
we
would
all
say
have to evolve.
VPNs. I would say DuckDuckGo. I would say the
Exactly.
alternative news feeds that we have on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
front
100%
page
correct.
of our
That's what I meant.
from news.
Alternative newsfeed, yes.
But even at that, so much of what we're getting these days is being throttled or hidden.
Mhm. I agree, Chuck. But it's getting. But point being is that it's getting out there.
Yeah, slowly and ploddingly, and it's still there's a certain amount of plausible deniability for
Mm,
people who wear the mask too much and don't do anything but Google News.
yeah, maybe, but it's becoming more implausible though, for real. Like,
It is.
Where are the bodies? Where are the bodies, people? Christ, help me out.
Here is something that causes me a certain amount of fright.
Yeah.
A May 13th story from BC. BC to refuse driver's license renewals to people with unpaid COVID-19 fines.
I agree, Chuck. That's petrifying.
Yeah.
It is.
The legislation should be passed, the BC legislature by July 1st. No announcement here.
Canada isn't that Canada Day?
Yeah, it's supposed to
Oh,
be Canada
awesome.
Day.
Well, do we get to kiss it goodbye first?
Uh, only in BC. I imagine they'll bring it up in other ways for the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And there's some question about whether or not you can at least follow the court case through the various levels of appeals and everything. I think almost all of these tickets are going to get thrown out of court if anybody with a modicum of sense actually objects to them. But anybody who just calls them toilet paper and lets them disappear. And to be fair, a lot of these guys will disappear anyway. I remember a story from Rebel News about a month and a half ago about the government couldn't really process any fines of this nature over $1,000 because their computer didn't work.
I heard that too, but it sounds like bullshit.
Yeah, but I do agree that I've heard stories in Manitoba that these sorts of tickets are being thrown out in bulk because the judges don't want to rule on them. But by the
That I
same,
agree with. That I totally admit too.
yeah. So these things are being so who knows what's going to happen. Right now, it's just fear mongering from the BC government that wants to retain a certain amount of relevance.
Do you
And
think they won't be? Do you think they won't be enforcing this continued shakedown of their citizenry?
well, I think they're already enforcing lots of other shakedowns of their citizenry.
Well, that's I mean, any chance I get, right?
Yeah. I don't know how this is going to shake out. I think it's worth coming back to in July to see if it does get passed. I don't see how this could possibly be moving forward. My perception right now is it's just something the Ontario or the BC government is doing to threaten people.
That's like every government. Every government of democracy is trying to threaten their citizenry so they don't try to be democratized.
Yeah, they're all doing that today. They're all doing that these
That's
days.
democracy 101 here. That's BC government here. Also,
Yeah.
moving towards the BC or provinces issuing more COVID-19 tickets as the pandemic continues, according to the CCLA, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association.
No, I
Right?
agree with that. Quebec and Manitoba were particularly bad in this area.
Yeah.
They're perceiving this as almost as a revenue source. You issue the tickets, you hope people will pay them off. My understanding is that even in the COVID case, there's a percentage in Manitoba and Quebec, maybe as high as 20 or 30% that's actually paying off the tickets. Oh,
I've
you
got a
got one
story-
too.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about the stains on it.
You were crying for your lost $500, I think.
Not the $500, Chuck. For real. I
Yeah.
spent $500 at bars. I had bar bills for that, and that's a true story. But I'm pissed off about my son's future. This is garbage. We can't keep going on like that.
No, I agree. I also really dislike the fact that they fined you and said they wouldn't let you go unless you went to the bank machine and paid
They
them.
didn't fine me. They shook me down for $500 and then fined me. By the way, that's the order it went down in too. They
Yeah.
gave me that after they gave me that after I gave them $500 as a receipt, and then dropped me off at the border.
No, I agree. That's 100%. That's what they do these days. They're
Exactly,
hoping to be able to get away with it, but that's what they're doing.
And also,
Two more quick stories.
yes.
Then we're done. Ontario extends stay-at-home order for an additional 2 weeks. Doug Ford hasn't been around much lately. He came out for 15 minutes on May 13th to say that the province-wide stay-at-home order has been extended an additional 2 weeks. So we're not allowed to go outdoors until I think it's June 4th. I take that restriction very seriously, particularly in light of the very first story we talked about tonight.
Oh, exactly. I'll just spend with the other 800,000 people I'm hanging around with. Also, Chuck, don't forget that someone was arrested at Queen's Park too, though. The horses were there.
Yeah, we
Right?
talked about that. I think 2 or 3 people were arrested overall.
It was still a shit show though, Chuck. Like, don't forget, there's someone pulled off the stage. That guy called me. Someone had the microphone, making a scene. It's not usually like that. Then it was almost as if it was contrived.
I do agree that the anti-lockdown protesters are some of the quietest, most non-violent people I've ever come across. But every once in a while, like in January or like this Saturday, something weird happens. It's not among the regular people who are out protesting. Normally, it's
Docile.
provocation by the police.
Generally, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I think this day the police decided they wanted to shut down the audio at Queens Park at 6 o'clock, and some guy was disagreeing with it.
Yeah, but
Uh,
I don't understand why though. Like, I don't. Was it due to do with the Palestinians had to come in, which would make sense to me.
no, it wasn't the Palestinians had to
You
come in.
know,
It was just a question of the police felt it had to be locked up, and the
Mhm.
only way to do this is to use violence. The police are
Mhm.
structured so that they
Well,
default
I agree.
automatically to some form of violence.
Well, I agree. Bullies don't ever use don't bullies never ask the principal what they should do with some kid's lunch money.
Yeah,
They're like we should control them through domination and violence, and because for the right of us all.
yeah, I agree, and I sort of think those are all the top stories for tonight. Did we miss anything? Oh yeah,
Yes,
Greyhound Canada
Chuck.
cuts
It's a
all
huge
bus
story,
routes.
Chuck. That's a huge story, Chuck. The Greyhound, and that's why is that a huge story, Chuck? Is this one of those constitutional things that we rely upon then of our ability to travel around to see other people then that is getting locked out of us due to commercial reasons then?
I'm going to disagree with that.
All right,
Greyhound is overpriced.
fair enough.
Greyhound has weird schedules. Greyhound is crowded. There is an entire gray market of
Ironically,
not
gray market.
Greyhound
Yeah,
buses
yeah.
that charge $30, half a third the cost of a Greyhound ticket to go the same length of to go the same places. Ottawa, Montreal, they're building themselves up organically. They're
Newfoundland,
regional
Vancouver, Chuck,
organizations.
Toronto, Chuck. I've never taken it a long way. So I took it. I did, however, take it to see a girlfriend in New York.
Yeah.
Uh,
There are lots of these. You can find them with a little bit of searching. 5, 10 years ago, Greyhound sued a lot of them, tried to run them out of business. And I think there's a certain amount of justification. Greyhound died, but there is still bus services to all these areas, despite what Greyhound says. Anybody who's a real journalist, anybody who's really curious, can do pretty basic due diligence and find a trip to Ontario or anywhere in Ontario or to New York or to Manitoba or to BC if they want.
so is this not a big deal then?
I would say no, it's not. I put it in here specifically so I could say that Greyhound is being replaced by smaller, more nimbler players.
Hmm. I understand what you're saying. So it's not a big deal, I guess, but it kind of is a bit.
Yeah, I think it's an end of an era. It's sort of like they've stopped using biplanes.
That's it's not quite that easy. It's not, Chuck. You're the one around. I don't remember that, so I'll rely on you then.
Eh,
But it feels if it's still a big deal though. That's still like a national traveler though.
um,
Like how's this? We can't get on planes anymore.
but there are still buses. They're just not Greyhound buses. They're
Yeah.
smaller buses, uh, organized and done with smaller gray market players, mostly with better air conditioning and internet access
Yeah. Well,
and
fair
lower
enough.
prices.
Oh, that's not Chuck. Then I'll take your word for that. Then, although the point being is that me and Chuck have taken one of these services, so it's not as if I'm unaware. But great, I would think of this as a big deal a bit still.
How
For
come?
real, like the reason being it's a national traveler service though, and people would know that then, so they can go from all over Canada, almost say via rail or something like that. You know what I mean? Or like that kind of big service though, like Air Canada, even though it's brutally expensive and the people are jerky to you, it still is a national service though, right? And so we're losing a national service that we're thereby regionalizing us further then.
No, like I said, lots
Yeah,
of replacements. We
yeah,
lost
okay.
one brand of bus, lots of other brands.
You know what, Chuck? I can't name another bus, but I agree. But, so it's not a big deal. Fair enough. I agree.
Yeah.
I've never looked into it at all. Just
No,
it seems good then.
that's fair. Uh, I'm thinking that's mostly it for this week because I have to start preparing for a new television show tomorrow at
Oh,
12:30
God.
on the Back Channel Network. Something called the Sixth Estate, which I will be hosting. We will be talking to alternative media journalists all across the country. They'll be talking about what got them into journalism. They'll be talking about the techniques, the methodologies they use, and we'll be talking about their best upcoming story. Far more fun than the
Mhm.
legacy media stuff.
I saw the chat with you had with Mike too. Mike's a good dude, and he knows his technology and he knows news too. I like that.
Yeah.
It was more interesting than I thought it would be. I'm serious though.
Mike Bear is coming in for the fourth show. Tomorrow we have Wayne
Mhm.
Peters. He's out of Calgary. He'll be talking about some interesting people. Since we talked about some interesting people from
Mhm.
Calgary tonight, Wayne has
Exactly.
the first dibs on them. Week after that, we have Manitoba Alternative Media. And they have some interesting stories to tell. The week after that, we have Mike Bear from Free Speech Media, and he is a fascinating conversationalist. And we've worked with him personally a number of times before. We left him on the beach, I think, on Saturday
Um,
night. He was having a good
well,
time.
to be fair, I he left me at the beach, but it's good though. It's good people. He's a good journalist too. He's a great journalist actually.
Absolutely. And for our fourth show, we have lined up with Druthers.
Oh,
The
did
editor
you
of Druthers will be a good time.
did you see that video with him today? Did I send that to you on with Dan Dix? Do you see that?
Yeah, I saw his Dan Dix video.
That's great stuff though, man. I like Druthers too. I like Sean.
Yeah.
They're just good
John
stuff.
Jason, the editor of Druthers, good
Yeah,
man.
exactly. John Jason, he's a good guy though, man. And what can I say? It's nice to see the good people making it.
Yeah, and with that, I would encourage everybody here to like, to comment, to share, and to subscribe in order to defeat the bots and the algorithms preventing our word from getting out. I would also like to encourage everybody to contribute. Let me see. Help fund our growth. Help fund our growth.
Thank
There
you
we
for
go.
not making me bring that up, Chuck.
Multiple ways to pay us money if you like what we're doing. There is PayPal. We have a QR PayPal code. You can give us money directly at Nation Builder through a number of options below. And you can also send us e-transfers using my email on the site. We do good stuff. At the very least, we go in the line of fire. Al has a $500 bill to pay off still. And we want to do a couple of other good things over the
Yeah.
next little while. So please contribute.
Hey, Chuck, as I mentioned, the lawyers I will need, or as the lawyer suggested, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'll settle.
Absolutely.
I'd settle for a bottle of wine and a nice dinner if you look nice, but the money we could really use to keep the truth coming out.
Yeah, and to be fair, that is the end. I think this is last week today for May 17th, 2021. My name is Chuck Black. I'm with Al Calder. Always a pleasure to work with you. I will see you in a week.
Yeah, absolutely, Chuck. I'll even take you seriously. I'll take you at your word. I like working with you as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.